For centuries, explorers have scoured the earth for traces of lost civilizations, cities swallowed by the sands, temples hidden in jungles, ruins buried beneath volcanic ash. But no one expected the discovery to come from the bottom of the ocean, especially not near one of the most remote islands in Japan, and definitely not something that looked like this. Down there, beneath crashing waves and swirling currents, lies something no one can fully explain. A vast, stepped stone structure. Massive platforms cut at perfect angles, staircases descending into blackness, towering walls and monolithic slabs, all resting silently on the ocean floor, like a forgotten pyramid, drowned long ago. When divers first laid eyes on it, they thought they were dreaming, because this wasn't some random pile of boulders. This was something else, something that seemed carved, deliberate, ancient. And the deeper they looked, the more impossible it seemed. The world knows it now as the Yonaguni Monument. But what it actually is, no one can say for sure. It sits just off the coast of Yonaguni, Japan's westernmost island. At a glance, it looks like a submerged temple complex. Broad steps, narrow passageways, massive geometric terraces that almost scream intelligent design. It's big too, over 150 meters long and rising over 25 meters in height. And yet, it's completely underwater. So, how did it get there? That question has haunted scientists, divers, and historians since the 1980s, when the structure was first spotted by local diver Kihachiro Aratake. He was searching for hammerhead sharks and found the strangest stone formation anyone had ever seen. It didn't take long for word to spread. And when geologists began investigating, the debate exploded. Dr. Masaki Kimura, a marine geologist from the University of the Ryukyus, spent decades studying the monument. After hundreds of dives, detailed maps, and underwater surveys, he was convinced Yonaguni wasn't a fluke of nature. It was the work of human hands. He claimed to have identified roads, ramps, platforms, and even what looked like shrines and altars. According to Kimura, this site wasn't just old, it was very old. Built 10,000 years ago, or more. That would make it not only older than the pyramids of Egypt, but possibly the oldest large-scale stone structure on Earth. Older than Stonehenge, older than Mesopotamia, older than history as we know it. And that's where things get weird. Because if Yonaguni really is man-made, then some lost culture, was building monumental architecture at a time when humans supposedly couldn't. According to mainstream history, we were still nomadic, still figuring out agriculture, still banging rocks together in small tribes. So who built Yonaguni and what happened to them? Skeptics argue it's all a misunderstanding, that the formations are natural sandstone shaped over thousands of years by underwater erosion, tectonic shifts, and earthquakes. They say it's just a coincidence that the steps are so precise, that the walls are so straight, that the angles look so intentional. But there's a problem with that explanation. A lot of problems. For one, the monument has right angles and symmetry that don't usually occur in nature. There are flat surfaces that run for dozens of meters without deviation, steps that are evenly spaced, and certain features like what looks like a massive entrance or a massive pillar standing upright don't fit the pattern of erosion at all. Then there's the so-called face. Divers have reported what appears to be a massive head carved into the stone, complete with eyes, a nose, and a mouth. It's worn, yes, faded by time and tide, but unmistakably human-like. Could it be a statue? A guardian? A relic of whoever built the monument? And that's not even the most bizarre part. Multiple nearby structures have also been found beneath the waves. Stone paths, walls, even a circular formation some claim could have been an amphitheater. It's as if the entire seafloor hides the ruins of a sunken city. a metropolis swallowed by the ocean thousands of years ago. And if that sounds familiar, it should. Because that's exactly what Plato described in the legend of Atlantis. Now, nobody's claiming Yonaguni is Atlantis. But the similarities are hard to ignore. An advanced civilization, building in stone, vanishing beneath the sea after a catastrophic event. A place lost to time, remembered only in whispers. Could the Yonaguni Monument be a glimpse into that kind of forgotten world? Dr. Kimura believes so. He points out that the sea level around Japan was over 100 feet lower at the end of the last ice age. That means Yonaguni could have been dry land as recently as 10,000 years ago. If that's true, then whoever carved these stones or built these structures was doing so at the dawn of human civilization, which makes the site more than just an archaeological mystery. It makes it a time bomb, a crack in the timeline. One that shouldn't be there. One that changes everything we thought we knew about the rise of civilization. Because if Yonaguni really was built by human hands, it forces a terrifying question. What kind of event was powerful enough to wipe it all away? And why did it sink? The ocean didn't always cover the Yonaguni Monument. That much we know. At the height of the last ice age, roughly 20,000 years ago, sea levels were over 100 meters lower than they are today. What's now the seafloor was once dry land, part of a long chain of islands and plateaus stretching between Taiwan and Japan, a place early humans could have walked. As the planet warmed, the ice caps began to melt, and over thousands of years, the sea crept higher and higher, swallowing coastlines and drowning lowlands. This wasn't a sudden event. It was gradual, unfolding across generations. But if something more violent happened, an earthquake, a tsunami, a sudden land subsidence, then entire structures could have disappeared in a single cataclysmic moment. And Yonaguni lies directly along the edge of one of the most unstable fault lines on Earth, the boundary between the Philippine Sea Plate and the Eurasian Plate. This region is notorious for its seismic activity, earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions. The very bedrock is constantly shifting and cracking under pressure. If you were going to build something in prehistory, something massive and sacred, you wouldn't do it here by accident, unless you didn't know what was coming. Dr. Kimura has suggested that a massive undersea quake could have triggered a sudden collapse, dropping the monument below sea level almost instantly. One moment, a thriving coastal site. The next, gone, submerged, forgotten. And there's precedent for this kind of event. In 1693, a massive earthquake off the coast of Sicily caused entire sections of land to fall into the sea. In 365 AD, a quake near Crete triggered a tsunami so large it wiped out cities across the Mediterranean. And in Japan itself, the 2011 Tohoku earthquake caused coastal subsidence. Some land sank permanently by over a meter. Now imagine something like that happening thousands of years ago, before records, before writing. A civilization living along the edge of the sea, building in stone, unaware that the ground beneath them was anything but solid. But even if Yonaguni did sink because of an earthquake or tsunami, that still leaves the bigger question. Who built it in the first place? Because if the monument was constructed before it went underwater, then we're talking about a culture that existed more than 10,000 years ago. That's before the pyramids, before writing, before almost every known civilization on Earth. It predates Sumeria by 5,000 years. It predates Göbekli Tepe, often called the world's oldest temple, by millennia. Mainstream archaeology insists that such a society simply didn't exist. Humans were still hunter-gatherers at the time, nomadic, small tribal groups, no cities. no tools capable of shaping megalithic stone, no math or astronomy sophisticated enough to build anything on the scale. And yet, there it is, a stepped platform the size of a football field with straight lines, flat walls, and sharp 90-degree angles. That doesn't happen naturally. Not at this size, not with this consistency. Critics argue it's just fractured sandstone. That tectonic activity created these strange formations over time. And in some cases, erosion can produce geometric shapes. But divers have pointed out features that don't fit that explanation. Staircases with even rises, corners that match architectural blueprints, and vertical walls cut with uncanny precision. Some even believe that the monument contains markings, symbols carved into the stone that resemble pictographs. Others have claimed to find tool marks, pillars, altars, and even a structure that looks like a large archway or gate. If true, this suggests not just a single monument, but an entire complex. And Yonaguni may not be alone. Additional underwater formations have been found in nearby areas, around Okinawa, Kurama, Aguni, and other Ryukyu islands, stone circles, flat platforms, patterns that hint at roads or canals. It's as if the entire region was once dotted with structures, now buried under the sea. Some researchers have proposed that this could be the ruins of a long-lost island civilization, one that flourished before the end of the Ice Age, then vanished as the sea rose and the earth shifted. It's not the first time such stories have surfaced. In Japanese mythology, there are tales of ancient island kingdoms, vast and beautiful, now lost to the ocean. The Ryugu-jo, or Dragon Palace, is one such legend, a mystical undersea realm filled with wonders, ruled by dragons, hidden from mankind. Other stories speak of a great landmass that existed far to the south, inhabited by people of immense knowledge, who disappeared without a trace. Is it all just coincidence? Or are these my ing at the shattered remains of a civilization so old, so lost to time, that even our myths barely remember it? Because the patterns don't stop at Yonaguni. Similar anomalies, impossible ruins, submerged cities, and unexplained stonework have been spotted across the globe. From the sunken city of Dwarka off the coast of India to the Bimini Road in the Bahamas to megalithic blocks off the coast of Cuba, these aren't isolated glitches. They form a pattern, a buried layer of history no one is supposed to talk about. But what if Yonaguni is the missing puzzle piece? The smoking gun that ties all of it together? Dr. Kimura certainly thinks so. According to him, the entire site isn't just one monument, it's a sprawling complex. He's identified what he believes to be a grand staircase, a ceremonial hall, a road system, and even a pyramid-shaped platform rising in steps, almost like a ziggurat. But here's where things get even stranger. At one end of the monument lies a rectangular pool carved straight into the stone, with smooth walls and a depth of nearly 2 meters. Nearby, an isolated megalith stands like a sentinel, jutting up from the seafloor with eerie symmetry. Kimura believes it may have served as a religious altar, or perhaps something even more advanced, an astronomical marker aligned with the stars. That's not just speculation. Some researchers have claimed that parts of the monument are aligned with the solstices, just like Stonehenge. And if that's true, someone would have needed astronomical knowledge, tools, observation over years, maybe even centuries. This was not the work of primitive wanderers. It was designed, engineered, and then buried by the ocean. Mainstream archaeologists still reject the idea. They say the structure is nothing more than natural sandstone, eroded by thousands of years of wave action. But when you put it next to other underwater anomalies, it starts to look like a part of something much bigger. And that's where the theory takes a sharp turn, from controversial to forbidden. Because if there really was a highly advanced civilization before the known rise of Mesopotamia, Egypt, or China, then history as we know it collapses. The textbooks are wrong, the timeline is broken. We didn't rise slowly from caves into kingdoms. We fell from something greater and forgot. And there are other voices, less academic, more speculative, who believe Yonaguni might not just be prehistoric. They suggest it could predate humanity as we know it. That idea might sound ridiculous until you look at the evidence, because some of the features found at Yonaguni are so massive, so deeply embedded in the bedrock, that recreating them today would take industrial-scale effort. We're talking thousands of tons of rock carved, shaped, and arranged underwater, without the benefit of modern machinery. Who could have done that? Unless we're missing something fundamental. Unless the story of human origins is more complex and more terrifying than we've ever allowed ourselves to believe. Because if a civilization was capable of this level of engineering more than 10,000 years ago, why haven't we found more traces of them? The answer may be simpler and darker than you think. We've barely explored the ocean. Over 80% of the seafloor remains unmapped, unobserved, untouched. And as sea levels rose after the Ice Age, entire coastal regions, where early humans would have settled, disappeared. Entire cities could lie beneath the waves, buried beneath silt, invisible to sonar. Forgotten not because they never existed, but because they sank. In fact, most ancient civilizations we know about were discovered not by digging, but by accident. Farmers striking stone blocks, earthquakes revealing ruins, construction crews stumbling onto mosaics and statues. Now, imagine how many ruins exist at the bottom of the sea, where almost no one is looking. But there's more. In recent years, a new wave of researchers has begun using satellite imagery, LiDAR, and deep-sea drones to scan the ocean floor. And they're finding things, structures, anomalies, patterns that look like streets, walls, even foundations. But the data is patchy, incomplete, and without funding or academic backing, it's often dismissed outright. Still, a few images have leaked. Faint outlines of rectangular grids off the coast of India, dome-like shapes deep beneath the Caribbean, massive blocks in the Mediterranean arranged in symmetrical rows, and, of course, the ever-present rumors of lost maps, classified dives, and governments quietly suppressing evidence. Why? Because if even one of these sites is real, it opens the door to everything else. Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu. The forgotten continents whispered about in ancient legends. Cultures erased by flood, fire, or time. For centuries, we called them myths, fairy tales. But Yonaguni forces us to reconsider. Because unlike the others, this one is real. You can swim to it, you can touch it. It's not a myth, and that makes it a problem. Because if this place is real, tangible, measurable, irrefutable, it demands answers that no one is willing to give. Not scientists, not governments, not history books. It sits there like a glitch in the record, a structure that shouldn't exist, in a time that shouldn't have people, let alone architects. And yet, there it is. And here's where things start to twist, because it's not just about stone blocks anymore. It's about what they were hiding. Divers who've explored the monument up close say there's a place, deeper than most have gone, where the monument seems to split. A crevice, narrow and dark, like a corridor carved into the rock. For years, currents and low visibility made it nearly impossible to explore. But one team, equipped with deep-sea lights and rebreathers, went in. They called it the Throat, a tunnel-like shaft roughly 2 meters wide, just enough for a diver to squeeze through. It slopes downward, deeper into the monument's heart. And then it stops. At the bottom of that tunnel lies something strange. a flat, circular stone, smoother than the surrounding rock, marked with lines. Not cracks, not erosion, lines, patterns, symbols, etched across the surface in sharp, deliberate strokes. They don't match any known language. Not Sumerian, not Egyptian, not even proto-writing. It's something else entirely. And this is where the story splits in two. One version says the markings are nothing, just the brain playing tricks, seeing patterns where none exist. But the other version, the one whispered among independent researchers and fringe archaeologists, says the markings aren't just ancient. They're encrypted, too orderly to be random, too modern in style. One diver described it as machine precision, laser straight lines that curve at perfect angles, like a circuit board or a map. The stone was never removed. No team has brought it to the surface. But photos exist, grainy, color-shifted, low-res snapshots taken in the dim blue of deep-sea lights. Some believe those photos were quietly suppressed. Others say they were never made public at all. But here's the kicker. Multiple divers across different years described the same thing, the same tunnel, the same symbols, and the same feeling, a sense of pressure, not physical, something else. Like the site wasn't just old, but alive, watching, waiting. That pressure wasn't just in their heads either. One diver reportedly blacked out at the entrance of the shaft. Another's equipment inexplicably failed the moment he entered the corridor. Lights flickering, gauges spinning, oxygen lines hissing. He made it out shaken, barely speaking. Coincidence? Maybe, but it gets weirder. Some believe the monument wasn't built on solid ground, but on top of something else, a natural energy source or a magnetic anomaly. In fact, compass interference has been documented in the region. Instruments behave erratically. Sonar returns strange echoes. It's like the whole area is wrapped in static, and it doesn't stop at the monument. Fishermen in the surrounding waters have reported strange lights beneath their boats, glowing orbs that drift silently beneath the surface, then vanish. No noise, no heat, just movement. And sometimes, voices. One local diver claimed he heard something while inside the structure. Not sound exactly, more like a vibration, a resonance in the bones, not the ears. A low hum, rhythmic, like breathing. No official investigation was ever launched. No scientific dive teams followed up. And yet, for years afterward, Japanese maritime authorities quietly restricted certain diving activities in the area. No reason given. And here's the thing. This silence, it's consistent. Across the world, underwater anomalies seem to attract the same treatment. Initial excitement, wild theories, then nothing. Silence, denial, vanishing reports, restricted zones, like someone or something doesn't want these stories followed. And maybe they have a good reason, because if the Yonaguni Monument is more than just stone, if it's a gateway or a vault, or something not meant to be disturbed, then waking it up might be the worst mistake we could make. Let's entertain that thought for a second. Imagine a civilization so old, so advanced, they mastered the oceans before we tamed fire. A society capable of manipulating stone on a scale we can barely comprehend. What would they have left behind? Technology? Artifacts? Warnings? Or something else entirely? Something alive. Because here's the wildest theory of all. One that slips into the darkest corners of forbidden history. What if Yonaguni isn't a monument? What if it's a lock? Not a building, but a seal. Built to hold something in. Something buried beneath the waves for a reason. And what we've been calling carvings, rooms, and corridors are just the edges of something far bigger. Something sleeping. That's what it feels like when you look at Yonaguni too long. Like you're not just looking at an ancient structure, but into the eye of something massive, buried, and breathing slow in its slumber. Waiting. Not in a dream, but in a pause, as if it was interrupted mid-thought, mid-purpose. And the terrifying question isn't what it was meant to do, it's when it's meant to wake up. Because everything about the monument hints at intention. The precise lines, the deliberate angles, the eerie symmetry of its steps and terraces. This isn't random erosion. It's not chaos, it's architecture. And architecture has purpose. But whose? If the site really predates every known civilization, then we're not just dealing with lost history, we're dealing with a lost world. A version of Earth that didn't just vanish, but was covered up. Not by accident, but design, and maybe not by nature. Some researchers believe Yonaguni is part of a much larger network. A global grid of megalithic sites, many now underwater, that once mapped energy flows across the planet. From the Bimini Road in the Bahamas, to the submerged structures off Cuba, to the massive stone formations off the coast of Malta. All lying just below the waves, all forgotten, and all activated, maybe even constructed, during a time when the Earth's magnetic field was different, when sea levels were lower, when the poles weren't where they are today. What if these sites were part of a system? Not temples, not tombs, but machines. Machines that interacted with the planet in ways we don't understand anymore, drawing on geomagnetic currents, resonating with frequencies we no longer use. Machines that could shape weather, energy, maybe even consciousness. If that sounds impossible, remember this. We're still discovering ancient knowledge we can't replicate. Pyramids aligned to stars with laser precision. Stones weighing hundreds of tons moved across mountains without wheels. Even our best engineers still argue about how it was done. So, what if Yonaguni was the first? Not just the oldest pyramid, but the prototype. A place where it all began. Before Egypt, before Mesopotamia, before history started keeping track. And maybe it was left underwater on purpose. Not by rising seas, but by those who wanted it forgotten. Which begs the question, who were they? The mainstream answer? No one. It was erosion. Case closed. But ancient legends from Japan speak of Mu, a great civilization that sank beneath the waves. Plato wrote of Atlantis. Other cultures speak of Lemuria, different names, same pattern, a golden age, a collapse, a disappearance, always into the sea. Could they all be describing the same thing? And what if those civilizations didn't just vanish, but left something behind? A warning, a signal, a structure that, once discovered, would force us to confront the truth. That we are not the first. That history is not a straight line, but a spiral. That time forgets. Until it remembers. And now we're remembering. Satellite scans are revealing more submerged structures every year. Technology is finally catching up to the ocean's secrets. But as we unlock them, we may be pulling on a thread we don't understand. Because some doors don't open from this side. Some doors open us. Think about it. Why is there no global effort to fully excavate Yonaguni? Why aren't governments throwing funding at the chance to uncover the earliest human civilization? Why the silence? Maybe because they already know what's down there. Or worse, because they don't. And that uncertainty is more dangerous than any discovery. Because what happens if we find a chamber beneath the monument? What if we open it? What if it isn't empty? Some divers say they've heard things in the currents. Voices that aren't quite words. Shapes in the shadows that don't swim like fish. Feelings that aren't fear, but recognition. Like something is calling, like it's aware. And now, with more eyes turning toward the deep than ever before, through sonar, drones, submersibles, we may be closer than we've ever been to waking something that was never meant to be disturbed. And maybe that's the final twist. What if we didn't discover Yonaguni? What if it let itself be found after 10,000 years of silence, erosion, earthquakes, storms? It's still here, still intact, still humming with something ancient and unspoken, waiting, watching, and now that we've seen it, we can't look away. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this exploration into the depths of mystery, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future discoveries that could change everything we know about the past. The ocean has its secrets, and we're only just scratching the surface.